What happened to me? I mean, came back with both arms, both legs. Everybody in my platoon made it back. Nothing happened to me. And so I didn't want to step forward and say, look, I think I have a problem.
Matt likes to say he had an easy war compared to many Afghan vets, but the reservist who volunteered for the mission had a tough job. Force protection, making sure those convoys stayed safe. Inside the vehicles, they'd scan the road looking for anything suspicious. When they found it, it was Matt's job to get out and investigate. Often, like this day, when 2 Canadian soldiers died at the hands of a suicide bomber, it was Matt who cleaned up.
Not all of them were suicide bombers, but enough were. And enough were on my convoy that you get out there and you're looking and you're looking and you're looking and you're looking. You're trying to figure out, what about that one? What about that one? What about that one? And you're trying to decide whether or not a vehicle or a pile of rubbish or a box at the side of the road is that threat. And the only way to do that is to get your mind spun up so fast that you're doing it even without thinking about it.
The problem was that when he got home, the spinning wouldn't stop.
I was working in a metal shop, and I could see him hammering plate steel. I know what noise plate steel is. I can identify it, I can pick it out. But every time that hammer came down, I'd flinch. Every time, again and again and again and again and again.
For Matt's fiancée, Kimmy Grass, his nervousness made her nervous.
He was really jumpy. Simple things like grocery shopping. During the day, we couldn't do it. We'd have to wait and go to the 24-hour grocery because it would be too crowded in the store. And then I would feel bad for having to ask him to go grocery shopping because I knew if he went there, he could have a panic attack or anxiety or something.
The tiniest of details became the most important. And that leads to obsessive compulsive, where you can't help, but everything's got to be done right to the point where you don't want to step out the door. You know, I'd be sitting on the couch and go, I'm kind of thirsty. There's no pop in the fridge. You know, what's involved in going out to get a pop? And most people here don't think about it. They just grab some shoes, they're out the door. And I'm sitting here thinking, what do I need? And before I would go anywhere, I needed to have a plan. This is what I'm going to do. This is what I need. This is where I'm going. You know, this is how long it's going to take. And do I need to tell anybody? And all of a sudden events became so complicated that I'm having to think these things through from front to back that they become overwhelming. Now a simple task has become something which requires the 13 stages of battle drill and 8 hours of preparation. And all I wanted was a pop from the corner store.
At first, Kimmy dismissed it as just the pressures of being home. But soon Matt was in a rut, drinking, sleeping most of the day, and then wide awake and terrified at night.
He'd just wake up in cold sweat, like the bed would be drenched. And we call it the crypt keeper, because if you've ever seen it, this guy springs out of coffin, just sits right up, and that's what he's like. I've woken up to him trying to like get out of bed. And I'm like, what are you doing? Like, go back to sleep. And he would mumble something about, I can't, I have to get to him. He's hurt or he's choking or something. With Matt, that's when a lot of his flashbacks come, is when he's sleeping.
Eventually, it all caught up with him. Everything became just too much.
Wake up to go to work, and instead of just a general, I don't want to go to work today, I'd cry for 10 or 15 minutes.
You cry?
Oh, every morning for weeks on end, I was crying every morning when I woke up. There are lots of people who don't love their jobs, who get up every morning, have their breakfast, and go to work because they realize they have to. Most of them don't have to curl up in a ball for cry to 10 minutes before they get out of bed.
Matt's employer had kept his job open while he was in Afghanistan, but increasingly Matt couldn't function. He quit that job and the one that followed. But that meant he was home all the time, which created new problems with his young boys.
My kids would ask me for something simple. Can I have a snack? No, leave me alone. I drove them away.
I guess he put out enough that he didn't want to be bothered, so the kids knew that, and they stayed away from him. So he kind of faded into the background.
But in a small house, there's not much background when Dad is so quick to anger.
They'd be playing with a toy, and it'd be something that beeps or blinks or something, and the third time I told them, stop that. Gimme. Problem solved. Go away.
Me, personally, I have, right now, a lot of anger issues, and, you know, I go to a bar intending on finding someone. You know, it doesn't matter what they say or do. You know, if they gave my friend an ugly look, you know, I'd go up to him or something, or just wait for something to happen, you know, and I'd want it to happen, and then that was never me.
For Dave Hawkins, the feelings are still very raw. He's only been home 6 months, and his family, too, walks on eggshells.
No, he'd be right in your face, and he would threaten you.
Really?
Mm-hmm.
And did you feel threatened?
Mm-hmm. I thought he could hurt me. There were knives all over this house.
Knives?
Knives.
What kind of knives?
Hunting knives, any type of knife you could imagine. Short blades, long blades. He'd leave them out all over the place.
Dave knew things weren't right. Plans for enrolling in a firefighting course were put on hold. Instead, he threw himself into exercise and started self-medicating. Still does, with alcohol and drugs.
The worst part about it is going to bed, I find. That's the worst time. Because before you go to bed, well, first of all, you can't get to sleep. And you know the next day it's going to be exactly the same way. You're going to feel exactly the same thing. You're going to do every single thing you did, all the emotions, and you know it's just going to suck.
What he would do is he would just go out and sleep in the cab of the truck. I phoned the base once, and I said to them, tell me something. Do other guys do it? Yes, they do. Some guys coming home would want to sleep in the bathroom at home. Couldn't sleep in their bed, too big of an area.
And did they tell you that you should worry about this?
No. They just said that it was something they had noticed that guys were doing. Sleeping in their trucks or sleeping in small confined areas. Oh, all right.
They didn't say maybe you want to bring him in and have him talk to somebody about it, or?
They didn't say, well, maybe you should go out and look for him, or maybe you should bring him in, or gosh, maybe we better come down there.
Yeah.
That was really weird.
For Dave, though, that was just fine. He didn't want anyone asking about his problems, because then he wouldn't have to admit he had any.
You feel ashamed, and you feel like there's so many other people that don't have this, you know, and you know, why you? They saw the same things as you, but you're the one who's acting like this, so you feel ashamed of yourself.
Nobody wants to be broken in the Army. Nobody. Nobody wants to be weak. I tried to do it on my own. I tried to be tough and soldier through it.
Looking back, Matt can see how damaged he was. After he lost his civilian jobs, the forces found him a military one. And then they sent him on a leadership training course.
I went on what is considered to be one of the toughest courses in the CF for just regular soldiers.
For the first few days, Matt was fine, but there was something about being back in the field, even in simulation, that finally got to him. All of a sudden, the toughness that he'd always relied on just wasn't there.
And I cracked completely. I couldn't function. Everybody was really surprised because I hide it well. One of their higher ranked candidates up to that point. I said, look, just send me home. I'm not fit to do this job because I can't do it right. Went home, no job, nothing. It was done, completely broken.
The next morning, Matt got a military escort from the training camp to a doctor's office. A month later, he was diagnosed with PTSD. When we come back, the genocide, the general, and the hidden tragic toll.
Because ultimately, this injury, PTSD, leads to suicide in extreme. I tried it 4 times.
What Canada's military knows about PTSD comes in large part from this place and from this man. In 1994, Romeo Dallaire headed the UN assistance mission in Rwanda and watched as 800,000 people were butchered in less than 100 days. The world failed Rwanda and Dallaire, but as he returned home, the general blamed himself. He fought his own demons in private until the day he was found almost comatose on a park bench. More than anything or anyone, Dallaire has taught Canadians that combat injuries come in all forms and that mental injuries can be the most devastating of all.
The ultimate abandonment, the ultimate anxiety, the ultimate all of a sudden sense of isolation, of unable to handle anymore this pain. Because ultimately, this injury, PTSD, leads to suicide in extreme. I tried it 4 times.
Two years after his heroic return from Afghanistan, Jeff Gravel went back for another tour. But this time, the demons were even harder to shake. He returned home and then transferred to a base in Ontario, a move that became a trigger for all the symptoms he'd been struggling to suppress.
What was the turning point? Like, when did you decide, I can't handle this by myself anymore?
So I was up by myself in Petawawa, and I realized every night I was going through 8, 10, 12 beer. And it got to the point where I realized it wasn't me. Like, why am I doing what I'm doing? And I realized once I was away from my social support group, like my family, or whoever it may be, I realized there was a bigger problem.
For Jeff, salvation came in the form of an old sergeant major who recognized his problems and persuaded him to get help.
And when you got the diagnosis, what was your reaction?
It's hard to deal with. I mean, you build yourself up to jump out of planes. You gotta be a certain level of toughness to walk around the desert with a machine gun. You gotta be certain. I mean, people hold you in a certain esteem or a certain regard, and to find out that you're weaker than all that, that take away the weapons and the armor, and you're just as frail as everybody else. It's a heavy realization.
You gotta help yourself too, man.
He got the usual treatment, medication, therapy, but he also discovered, like Matt Salter, that military peer counseling program. 3 years later, Jeff is still a regular member.
It lets you know that you're normal. You know, every other group of victims of sorts has a support group. And it's nice that soldiers now have that recognition that maybe parts of our job are heavier than what people thought.
Patient?
That even if the guy across the table is 65 from Vietnam or Suez, we've all got the same nightmares. The gatekeepers to our dreams are still the same. I mean, we still fight the same ghosts, regardless of the generation.
But the ghosts are not easily vanquished. Even with treatment and support, Jeff has had his setbacks.
And if you're gonna do an 8-ball and smoke a half bag to try and come down from it and still ain't working, eventually you're gonna run out of resources, I guess. And then you realize the mess you've made yourself into, the lack of honor you've left in your friend's memory or your friend's honor. I mean, you've turned yourself into a total train wreck of an individual. So the only way out would seem to be that at the time. And then you get to that fear where you're like, oh, fuck, what am I doing? This is heavy. Like, this is point of no return. I put a rope around my neck.
Do you remember what it was as you stood there with that around your neck? What made you stop?
Fear.